Today's session's twofold. One, we're going to talk about how we can better assimilate and educate the people so they feel part of the great American experiment, certainly in the greatest state of all, the golden state, and get it golden again. And we're not talking about slogans for the politicians in this race. We're talking fundamentally how we take responsibility as a people from A to Z, R or D, it doesn't matter, for giving people the opportunity to live in liberty. This is what we're going to do. We're going to assimilate and tell people what they need to know, how they can think for themselves and actually manifest and be part of the American experiment. That will help not only the education system where you really teach them the truth, the facts, how to expand and think for themselves and own themselves. And this isn't just self-determinism, some Kierkegaard philosophy. This is a nut and bolts what we know has worked in America and throughout the world, as America being the beacon of that light. And with that might, I will say that we should do a better job of bringing people in so they're not gaming the system as if we're living in some, cold world, Eastern European socialist thing with the limits there, and how you just cap what you can get, work to, a race to the bottom, to do as little as you can to get away with what you can. No, to manifest, to create as much as you can to get the big reward, knowing that you did it. But I gotta say, California, its leadership has let something very interesting happen. And a lot of people have not discussed this aptly in the governor race nor in any other race. In 2019-2021, the amount of tax revenues collected by the state more than doubled from the $150 billion to about a little over $300 billion, basically doubled. And the spending rose to meet the surpluses. Now, there were some COVID things, some other things happening, but this is what happened. You actually had a situation where the government would actually increase the spending, again, to match the revenues. Almost invariably, this always happens with government. So what happened here was when the tax increases stopped, the revenues dropped after this blip, the spending continued to grow. And this is the problem we have now, which turned a $75 billion surplus into a $50 billion deficit. You couple that with an estimated 30% of all spending being fraudulent, redundant, wasteful, or make work, we now have a situation that there's no real remedy except to actually instill these 50 measures that will actually eliminate fraud at the state level. And I can get into that, and I will in a minute. But I want to let you know that we have a current group of people who are not competent, capable, caring to be accountable in any way, and nor have the courage to admit the truth to the people that pay their paycheck and elect them in the first place. So we have to clean house. When you have a failed company, they go for bankruptcy. And sometimes you reorg it on Chapter 11. With this crew, it's Chapter 7. It's time to liquidate these people and bring in a whole new level of staff. Okay, so this is what we do. To get rid of the multi-billion-dollar deficit, there's 50 measures I want to talk about. The first 10 cause to modernize the IT, eliminate benefit fraud. So people that are receiving benefits. It's bad enough that taxpayers are getting burned, but the intended recipients aren't getting the funds either. So it's a two-pronged, criminal level of activity. And the malfeasance is in the area of criminality. It's not about civil damages. And the fiduciary responsibility of those elected officials are going to have to pay a price. And that's why I would, as a public elected official, would insist that they sign a code of ethics that basically says if you defraud the American taxpayer, your constituency, you engage in real malfeasance, proven, you are dishonorably discharged as if you're in the military. You lose your job, your pension, real pain for those that inflicted pain. Right now, there are oaths. I'm talking about a legally binding deal.
Awesome.
I did this along all other schoolmates at the Yale School of Management, which at the time, in the mid-90s, I don't even think the law school did this as they should. And this is not to encourage a society where you're worried about, what am I doing? That's not it. It's really to encourage a place where everybody you interface with is on the level like you are, and that's how you get good business done. Good business drives a good business. Malfeasance drives out good business. Fraud, and that's what you have in countries in the third world, or why, in the case of Russia, after Glasnost started, they had a lot of problems in the 90s because we did a lot of FDI, foreign direct investment, like Chevron in the 90s, but they all failed because there were so many corrupt actors on the other end. We have to clean it out. It's an ecosystem. So anyway, here are the proposed ways to eliminate benefit fraud by modernizing IT. We accelerate AI for fraud detection. We implement machine learning, cross-match tax, employment, and benefits data in real time to catch identity theft in unemployment, EDD, and welfare programs. Those billions. We upgrade the legacy system. This is fast-track the ongoing modernization of the EDD to prevent systemic payment errors that people don't care because it's not their money. Here, they'll have the systems, and you get benefits. And the people that work, if you do a good job, you get a fast-track promotion. So we can create easily incentives that reward great performance with good actors in government that are really given the solemn oath and task of doing governance. Wow, what a concept.
Revolution of change.
Wow. And then we can expand biometric verification. This requires, self-based biometric login verification across all state benefit portals to stop the bot-driven identity fraud, which is rampant and a big part of the fraud. I think everybody would like that too. You're okay? Then we can use the blockchain technology, which has evolved and has been very much verified, to really ensure vendor contracts use distributed ledger technology for state procurement and vendor payouts. This will stop forging and billing fraud. You won't be able to get away with it, and that's using blockchain. It'll take the human fraud aspect out of it. Wow, that's great too. We're billions there. Number 5, we'll centralize identity database. This will create a unified state ID verification system across all agencies, EDD, DMV, CalVet, to prevent multi-agency fraud. See, that's where a lot of the fraud happens. Between the interactions between the agencies, there's no accountability, enforcement, or understanding where that money went. This is how the fraudsters work. This will stop that, and to mitigate it at least. Number 6, social media data mining. Wow, there we go. You will use the automated web crawling to flag individuals claiming state disability while publicly posting videos of strenuous work. This goes on all the time. All right, then we'll work with other states. This is how it propagates. Cross-state benefit, cross-checking. Wow. So we share data with our neighboring states, Nevada, Oregon, Arizona, check same attendance, benefit, and collections. And maybe we come with a reward system so that the state agencies that work together, we get them together and they have a little anti-fraud, and it can really galvanize relations between the states. Number 8, I'm going to automate seizure of assets. Will empower the FTB, the Franchise Tax Board, to automatically garnish wages or freeze the accounts of individuals convicted of benefits that they defrauded the people by. Wow, that's great. So state benefits fraud, we can actually go off and seize the assets. And that's a big area. I personally, it's not enough to just bust people up. You hear about in Minnesota, all these people frauded $3-4 million. We want restitution. Prosecution's great. Jail's great. I want restitution. So that money isn't hanging out there or isn't transferred to some family or some back channel shit. It's going to get done our way. Okay, then we're also going to upgrade the CalFresh EBT security. So we'll phase out these older magnetic stripe EBT cards along front there in favor of chip-enabled cards to prevent card skimming operations, which go on all the time. And then lastly, let's enhance the whistleblower and bounties. You're not a snitch if you're saving people's money. You're being a Robin Hood. You're being a Robin Hood for the people that robbed you and everybody in the hood. Robin Hood, right? So this isn't like, being a snitch on your family or some kind of group. No, man. We're going to give rewards to whistleblowers who report fraud within state vendor networks and government payrolls. So you can get paid to do the right thing. Not a bad idea. Sounds
like a great idea.
You're not a rat. You're being a Terminix, man. You're extinguishing the cockroaches. That's not being a rat. Okay. All right. Number 2, healthcare Medi-Cal integrity. All right? Look, we need some really aggressive Medi-Cal audits. We'll mandate comprehensive audits of Medi-Cal managed by care organizations to ensure patient roles are accurate and eliminate ghost patients. That's all the time. Death master cross checks, man. There's so many dead people getting paid, Social Security, Medi-Cal. We'll actually make sure that the federal and state records are updated so that that doesn't happen. Crack down on DME billing. What's DME? That's durable medical equipment. Okay, so a lot of people actually make fake billing for these durable medical equipments that never get fulfilled, and nobody checks. That'll all be changed. And AI is going to help us do this in a way that's cost effective and everybody can see transparently. So you know your dollars are not getting screwed over by some. A lot of people come in here are also illegal aliens that have really done this to come in and game the system. Oh, they figure this is open season. They never could get these opportunities in their country, so they come here for that. Also, prescription drug monitoring. We'll use AI to flag doctor shopping, over-prescription, state-of-the-art funded medication fraud. We'll get that under control. The nursing home oversight and making sure there's strict penalties and financial cover for mechanisms for nursing facilities billing for understaffed or unrendered services. You saw that the hospice fraud. And also the telehealth fraud task force. Go off on the state task force to specifically target, investigate telehealth, telemedicine billing scams in our state healthcare. Also, we'll have some strict pharmacy audits. We'll have routine, randomized audits of pharmacies to verify the dispensing of high-cost, state-funded specialty drugs. And I tell you what, with the most favored nation bill that Trump put through, which was really good, because now we're not going to pay 8 times for the same drug. The rest of the world's prices go up a little bit. Ours go way down, so we're all at the same. So rather than us paying $100 per pill, London and you're paying 10, they'll pay about 18, we'll pay 18. So we get an 80% reduction, they get a little bit of bump, but that's going to be the biggest healthcare savings in a long time. It's also one of the reasons why we spend double the healthcare than they do, is because of the prescription drugs. We can get into that later. But that will be a big audit, and we'll make sure that they're adhering to the most favored nations, that they aren't getting away with these excessive and egregious pricing policies and practices that many do. Also, we'll put asset limits for Medi-Cal. We'll institute stricter asset verification checks for non-early adult medical applicants to prevent wealthy individuals from gaming the system. They do that too. So that's not going to happen. And they'll root out the fraudulent clinics. This is really important. We'll require independent third-party clinical inspections. Companies like Bluminator. These guys will go in there before any new medical entity can bill Medi-Cal. So we'll have people, private sector audits, not just public sector. Private sector people who are retained, who are given a really specific mandate, who prove themselves to be very competent, very caring, willing to do this almost on a volunteer basis with a high opportunity cost for the government, on the government's behalf, and for the people's benefit. And then we'll also consolidate state healthcare purchasing. We'll do leverage big bulk purchasing of all state provided healthcare, negotiate better rates and expose price gouging. That will also save. So that's a huge area.
Will that affect the HMOs in California?
Of course it will, but in a good way. I'll make them more accountable. But at the same time, remember, if you prove to be more effective, you're going to be rewarded for performance, not rewarded for scamming the system. That's what all this is driving at. Just like you had in any industry. If industries want to do well and they grow and they take a greater market share and grow overall and they come up together, the best players, that's what's going to happen here in government. And you'll find ways that will monetize assets with advertising and other things. There's ways that the government can make money, okay, that haven't been done before and earn it. Also, we'll also do some tax administration on the underground economy. We'll close corporate tax loopholes. Reporting for multi-state corporations to prevent profit shifting out of California. I'm not so much into that, but I am into the tax evasion strike force. A lot of people, underground and tobacco markets, they're all out to get out of taxes. We all don't like to pay taxes. And why would you? With such a government that doesn't care and rips you off and gives you no return. Naturally, you're not going to want to pay taxes, and that's the easier rationalization of any business, especially small into businesses like I run. But if you have a government that starts to do all these things to show they care, that their money is being spent, and then they give you a report on where your tax dollars did and how you got to return. Do that 1% thing that Bloom did with the sales tax there. Also give you an impact report, and you have some choice where your tax dollars go. You're going to get people that are going to want to pay their taxes and feel good about it. And is that what you should have? That's real. That's a harmonious, healthy, working democracy, where there's a back and forth with the shareholders, the taxpayers in this industry, working with those that they elected to work for them and represent them. And that would, and I think we can all agree, let's crush those retail theft rings. Let's get a localized tax on and do that, and put, not make it a misdemeanor when you go in, smash someone's, property and just take their money. It's beyond, or their property. It's beyond actual shoplifting. It's terrorizing businesses who then leave the community that we want served. Okay, number 20. Number 4, we crack down on crypto tax evaders. We already talked about that. We'll work the FTB. We'll automate worker tax compliance. We'll strengthen the sales tax audits and make sure sales tax dollars really work for the people, not be scammed. And, the 1099 classification, I like the 1099. But if you're really an employee, great. You got to pay the payroll taxes. We'll also, end this unpaid vacation accrued liabilities. And, we'll limit the banking of state employee vacation hours to reduce the massive unfunded liability on the state's books. Look, you use it or lose it, and we want people to take more time off, and we'll still work the same number of hours. It leads to a healthier outcome. We see that in Europe.
More like Europe, yep.
And that's one area where I totally agree with my own personal experience. And then we also got to review the real estate tax loopholes and streamline tax collection and make it an integrated portal to easily flag underpayments and non-filers. But the biggest area is government operations and the spending cuts. We have to get back to performance-based budgeting. Require that every state agency justify their budgets based on measurable performance metrics rather than just baseline increases that are just arbitrarily there and no one checks and no one debates or no one even challenges in the fear of being name-called or some nonsense like that. That's huge. Right there, we get rid of this baseline increase. Because what happens in government spending, they don't consider a 5 or 7% arbitrary baseline increase an increase in spending. It's only if they go over that arbitrary increase, they call it that. You can't ever do books like that in the private sector. It's illegal. Why should the government do this? This is, not only at the state level, but the federal, local. That has to be completely done away. We must demand, as a people, as the shareholders of this country, of this state, of this city, real performance-based budget. If you don't do it, you get kicked out. Bingo. I want to see that. I want some strength there. I don't hear that from anybody in the governor's race. I wouldn't put it past Pratt. He would do it right away. He's actually gone too far. Yeah, I want to kick everybody out of the police department, the fire department. Wait. We need these. Many of those, 80% of those people are probably pretty good and would know how to fix it. But we definitely need to prune the bad apples. So, well, hold on there a minute, Spencer, but your heart's in the right direction. Number 2, we'll eliminate state office space or reduce it to really transition state government to a robust remote network. And then we can sell off those underutilized expensive state-owned real estate assets. You see the government do that quite well at the federal level under the leadership of Trump, who really understood real estate, and we'll get a much better utilization rate with the office. That's huge because you see that in the commercial zoning here in LA. Many of the office spaces are being converted into condos because no one really works in an office anymore. You see that throughout all these major buildings here being completely retrofitted for residents that used to be office space here in K-Town.
Yep.
All right. And then we also eliminate the middle management, or the redundant middle management at least. Agency by agency audits to reduce redundant supervisory roles in the state departments. I would also extend that to NGOs. They have to really justify their existence, what they're doing, especially the egregious amounts that are being paid to some of these NGOs, $700,000, and what they did with the money. There's a lot of malfeasance, which, again, will lead, if you're like what we have with the Palisades fire, the $100 million, not one dime went to the victims. It went to paying like $700,000 salaries to NGOs who do nothing. This has to stop. Lobbyists and stuff. Not that some lobbyists do good things, and within the confines of what their mission or their charter says, okay. But we need to have real active enforcement of that So if you're not really justifying what you're doing, bingo. And it's worth going after now, just like a tax fraud, because the monies have gotten so huge in this arena, we need to go after that. And really this will help eliminate the culture of basically systemic fraud in these institutions, which has more semblance of a third world country than it does America, I would say, in this case, in this state here in California. And then we'll audit all state contracts. We'll cancel, renegotiate bloated and underperforming IT and infrastructure vendor contracts. Bingo. We'll also do more public-private partnerships where they make sense. We'll shift the cost and risk of certain capital infrastructure improvements onto private investors and preserve the general fund. You get much better return many times in this case. Also, you can get matching funds with people who care and can bring a lot of expertise and strategic partnerships to those initiatives rather than spending 20 times more. Case in point, the Treasury Department. They're going to spend $4 billion on a building that they could just retrofit one for $25 million. I mean, and really do a robust RFP, I would add, so we can really bring in the private sector to compete with some of these nepotism-based public sector contracts, and so we get the best deal. And make that transparent for the people, so that they would see that their money's being more spent. And like I mentioned, there was a big surplus, and then we do really well. That money goes back to the people, like in a term of a dividend of a corporation would give back to its shareholders, or a pass-through income if it was an S-corp at LLC. Government needs to think that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If it takes away more revenue than it needs, give that money back to the people. It's their money, not yours. We have to, and this is part of Blumenomics, redefine the relationship between the governed and the government, the citizenry and the people that are public servants. Remember who the shareholder is and who the workers and the servants are. Who is working for who? The government, the public servants are working for the people and the citizenry, the real shareholders of America. Get that straight. Let's instill that in all of our public institutions, educationally, agency-wise, in all our cultural institutions, the media, and our entertainment. All right, down. And now what we're going to do is consolidate our state boards. We'll merge those overlapping state boards and commission to cut administrative duplication. We'll do zero-based budgeting for special funds. For special funds with massive surpluses, like the motor vehicle funds, to revert unspent balances back to the general fund or back to the taxpayer directly. Okay? All right. We'll cap state employee overtime, which is abused. We'll do the pension reform, so we bring the state worker retirement costs in line with the private sector norms. That is bloated. You've got people now, like the teachers fund, they make way more money now retired than they ever did in their peak years while they're employed. CalPERS, because of these generous, unrealistic promises that the public unions gave to themselves with no oversight, no checks and balances. This is what happens when you have one party rule in this state. And that happens everywhere in the world. It happened in other parts of the world before it happened here, I'll tell you that. And then we'll also reduce consulting spending. I mean, I would say most of the, what do you want, $40, $50 billion trading over, not any track laid, was all these consultants. I would love to see, and I know the public like to see, all those contracts, how that much money was spent under Governor Newsom's watch and nothing was done. And every one of those consulting contracts needs to be made for public view. So far, none of that has been done. And what they have done with AB 2624, they created a law that's about to be put into passed some legislation which would make it illegal for us as people to go and investigate potential fraud.
That's not right.
Well, it's beyond First Amendment. This is basically the criminals in public office basically insulating themselves from any scrutiny from the public they're supposed to serve and who pays them and pays these outrageous deficits. Pays into these deficits with no accountability.
That's crazy.
And who had authored this legislation was the wife of the Attorney General Bonta. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And if it wasn't for the law of the land, a Supreme Court that can strike this down, they would have absolute tyranny on this. And if the Democrats get in, they'll probably get rid of the filibuster. They will pack the court immediately and have 4 justices have a 7-6 a majority so they can really institute this law. We are looking at a potential Stalinist state in this country. So be careful. All right, and lastly, I want to talk about infrastructure and program efficiency. We can audit unspent homelessness funds, demand performance-based audits of all state homelessness allocations to ensure measurable reductions in house population. Pratt was correct. We don't have a homeless problem. We got a drug addict problem. Those people can come into these beds, even though that $400,000 bed, that was a scam. We could get that down to $50,000. But they don't want to. They want to be able to go out and do their drugs. They don't want to go into some house, then they can't get their drugs.
That's right.
That's 90% of the problem. And it's amazing to me, an outsider with no experience, quote unquote, schools the city council member and mayor on what the truth is. These people are so insulated on the truth, never walk the streets, live in an echo chamber of their talking points that even they have a hard time remember the few talking points they have, that they are out of touch with not only their own policies, but anything that could possibly work. And that's why this kid's going to win, I would say, or has the best chance, and certainly surged more than anybody. Clearly, if you look at the national attention to this race, he has the country behind him. And I'm sorry, sometimes you got to be accountable. When Miss Bass won the mayorship in 2022, it would get rid of homeless by 2026. They said they reduced it 17%. Based on what study and by whom, please? It's not gotten any better. There's been no real structural change.
Nope.
There might be some things here and there you did, some work efforts, but the money, there has been no improvement in quality of life in this city. Although, again, we ran $1 billion deficit on a $15 billion budget. And anyway, it could be possibly worse. But I look at San Francisco where they're having a building boom. They've turned it around since Mayor Lurie's come in after the disaster of London Breed. And we'll see if Spencer Pratt can do the same. Some of this is based on results, not DEI and identity politics. All right, now we're going to go to high speed. It is like high school with these people.
High-speed rail?
High-speed rail cost containment will cap the spending on the California high-speed rail project, limited outlays to only the currently funded projects until private assets secure and performance is actually proven. It can't be just, it actually has to show they did something. How can it be, people, that now it costs 10 times more for a mile of light rail in California versus what it is in Germany? I mean, it probably was the other way around 30 years ago. So that's what, 100 to 1 flip, relatively speaking? Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's reform the CEQA abuse. Streamline the California Environmental Quality Act process for critical infrastructure to lower skyrocketing state project costs. Look, I'm a big fan of the Bay Area Quality Management District. I worked there as a young man in the 80s when there was accountability. I came with a program to lower volatile organic compounds, VOC, at the factory I was working at. And the air quality has gotten better here. We've gotten rid of the nitrous oxide. We pay a bit more in gas, which they don't talk about. Is because we refine all the gas here. We have the highest standards. We also have the higher taxes. So combined, that gets us about $1.50 to $2.20 over the average rate of a gas over the rest of the country. And there's only so much you could do with that. I do think we could, keep these taxes up. I don't have a problem with the gas being where it is. If we keep the air quality really clean, show the less external healthcare costs. But let's show where those tax dollars are really leading to the world's greatest infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. We're late with the rail, years late with all the rail here, all the rail to at the LAX, way overrun. We may not even make it between now and the Olympics in 2028. We didn't make it in time for FIFA Cup here, coming here, although it's in other cities. And remember, 100 years ago, what city had the greatest civic railroad system in the world? Right here in LA.
Los Angeles.
1,400 miles.
Yep.
Incredible. And yes, General Motors, BF Goodrich brought up the easements to the right of way in the 20s, and we changed it to an automotive culture rather quickly. We built this city up quickly in the 20s. We could do better now. But we don't have the work ethic, we don't have the accountability, and we've created a make-work society. That will change because we will optimize these funds to get more efficient. And how can we do that? Well, we can implement optimizing, the water infrastructure funds to ensure highly efficient, shovel-ready storage, recycling, have a much better streamlining of business licensing in terms of, local and state licensing fees, so we can get really highly efficient digital portal to encourage business formation, tax revenue. We can cap the climate subsidies, really do a much better job in rainy day fund utilization. We can expand other ways of maximizing efficiency with prison consolidation and so forth. Maybe implement some congestion pricing where it makes sense. But my voice has really come out. I've given you a lot here. I want to give you some detail. But it's not going to matter if we have incompetent people who are not willing to face the truth, and also you encourage other people coming in that are willing to take the code of ethics and sign it. We have to go back in the sesquicentennial to those men who pledged, their life, their honor, and their treasure to this country. We need to have that spirit back here in California and certainly in Los Angeles. This is the Bluminator. Check it out on this glorious May Day, 2026.